All right, I think we are live. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on Facebook Live. I'm Julie, the Communications Manager for SRAP, which stands for Socially Responsible Agriculture Project. A few of my colleagues are joining us as well, and we will be introducing them soon. But first, I wanted to let you know that we're here today with an urgent call to action regarding two new USDA rules that have the opportunity to provide better protection for farmers. The first rule, transparency in poultry grower contracting and tournaments, if passed, would force poultry corporations to more transparently and truthfully disclose information that growers need to make informed decisions about their contracts and also how to better advocate for themselves. The industry does not want this rule passed and is working very hard to shut it down. Today, we'll talk about what this rule means and how you can submit public comments to advocate for increased transparency and fairness protections in the poultry industry. We're also going to be talking about newly disclosed information about how the industry is attempting to manipulate the public comment process to prevent the rule from being passed. Finally, we'll wrap up today's live by talking about advance notice of future rulemaking that will help inform policy development. I want to go ahead and give a little background about SRAP in case you're new to this organization. SRAP informs the public about the negative effects of industrial livestock operations while providing direct assistance to communities impacted by this destructive industry. Our team includes technical experts, independent family farmers, and rural residents who have faced the threats of incoming or expanding factory farms in their communities. We have a help hotline people can call for free assistance in facing an industrial livestock operation. You can visit our website at sraproject.org for more info. We also have a contract grower transition program that works to transform rural communities by engaging contract growers struggling within the industrial ag system. And real quickly, just want to give some background on why consolidation in the poultry industry is such a huge problem. So consolidation in the poultry sector allows agribusiness giants to manipulate the marketplace, and this reduces farmers' earnings, making it difficult for them to make ends meet. And this unchecked consolidation, where corporations control multiple stages of the production process, has created an imbalance of power. So this allows industry to manipulate the marketplace, trap farmers in exploitive contracts, push down the prices paid to farmers and ranchers, and drive independent producers out of business. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Craig Watts. He is the Field Team Operations Director for SRAP. Craig, I give you the floor.
All right. Thank you, Julie. And thank you for everybody for attending. Like Julie said, my name is Craig Watts, and I'm down here in southeastern North Carolina, right on the North-South Carolina border. I was a former contract poultry producer for 23 and a half years. Got into the business in 1992 under the guise that I was going to be invested in my future and be an independent businessman, but made what I thought was an educated decision on very fraudulent information. So I got disillusioned with the business pretty quickly, but then you realize, hey, I'm $500,000 in debt. So what I wound up doing was, my purpose was not to lose my farm. And that's not much of a purpose to get up and go to work every day. I was grinding out days and I was paying off debt. So, and there was a lot of things other than just money that were much bigger actually than the money that I saw issues within the industry. And it just was such a philosophical difference that in 2016, I decided to exit the industry. I started with the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project in 2016 as a consultant. Later on, I moved into the position of field director, where I am now, and also head up the our new contract grower transition program, which I'm really excited about. So without any further ado, I'll introduce, or let our wonderful guest introduce himself, Jake Davis from Local Root Strategies. Take it away, Jake.
Thanks, Craig. I appreciate it. Just as a quick introduction, I'm also a farmer in central Missouri, and have been working not only to build a small family farm here east of Columbia, Missouri, but also have been active as a policy consultant in a variety of roles with a variety of organizations over the last couple of decades. My firm, Local Root Strategies, now focuses on policy consulting around the food and farm sector to build a better food system. And like Craig, have been working for a long time trying to find ways to ensure that independent family farmers have a better opportunity to make a living and aren't taken advantage of by the multinational corporations that control our industry too often. So with that, I'll let Michael introduce himself.
Thanks, Jake. My name is Michael Diaz. Craig Watts and Susie Crutchfield and myself are, like you heard, part of SRAP's Grower Transition Program. Basically, we aim to engage contract growers who are struggling in the system. A lot of us really understand that it's fairly easy to get into contract poultry, but nearly impossible to get out. We worked as a contract poultry grower in South Carolina for about 4 years, and that was all that it took for us to realize that my wife and I had made a terrible decision on choosing to enter contract growing. Just like Susie and Craig, the industry bore down on us and forced us to make a hasty decision to just get out of contract farming. Thankfully, with the help of people like Craig, organizations like SRAP, we were able to get out from up under the entanglement of these large corporations and move on into advocacy, hopefully, providing some input on ways to avoid falling into the snares and the traps that these contracts also often put you in. So with that, I'll leave it, pass it off to Susie.
Hello, I'm Susie Crutchfield. I grew chickens in Arkansas for 20 years. I was shut off in 2012, along with 100 other growers across our state of Arkansas. This was due to a massive update that the integrators pushed on all the growers in 2010. And this bill we're going to talk about today could have addressed some of the issues of these massive updates and give us a better understanding of what we were going to face. The integrators would have to show the updates would help raise our standings in the tournament system. At the time, we made a decision not to do the upgrades because we didn't know whether we were going to get any more raises or if we were going to, be able to afford to do the upgrades. So they wouldn't show us anywhere that this upgrades would improve our financial stability. So with that, with the factors being the same as the current contract that we had, and the upgrades would not have been feasible at that time, it left us no choice but to declare Chapter 12 bankruptcy with the help of SRAP. We still live on the farm that we completed a Chapter 12 bankruptcy in 2018. Craig, with these issues, I give it back to you.
Thank you, Susie. And I'm going to just I'm going to turn it over to Jake here and let him.
Thanks, Craig. I appreciate that, and I will be happy to just give folks some general background and a sort of big picture perspective of where these rules that we're talking about come from and how they sort of how the process has come to be and some of the more recent events related to the Packers and Stockyards Act, as many of us are familiar. So just as a really big picture overview, in 1921, the Packers and Stockyards Act was passed, which really is the preeminent law that is focused on fairness in the production of livestock between the farmers and ranchers who produce that livestock and the big multinational meat packers that purchase that livestock and ultimately sell the meat on to consumers. that rule or that law, the Packers and Stockyards Act, is supposed to protect farmers and ranchers against unfair practices. And knowing that law was passed a little more than 100 years ago, in 2008, the legislator in the Farm Bill and the Congress in the Farm Bill legislated that the USDA needed to clarify and update some rules around the Packers and Stockyards Act. And those rules ultimately have been called a number of different names, including the GIPSA rules, that stands for Grain Inspectors, Packers and Stockyards, and or the Farmer Fair Practice rules. And they have been attempted to be made at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So when we pass a law, the next phase is that the administration has to make rules about how those laws will be implemented. And the rules have been attempted multiple times, including a process in 2010 that Craig and others know all too well, where the Department of Justice and USDA asked to hear from livestock growers, including contract poultry growers, and get a bunch of information on the record. They attempted to make those rules and then were subsequently held up by Congress through some maneuvers around appropriations that prevented USDA from finishing these rules. So this process is old. It started in 2008. It went through this 2009 listening period. The rules were attempted to be made. The rules were made once in 2015, and when the administration changed over, the rules were pulled back, and now we're going through the process again. We feel like that at this moment that there is really a moment in time for a variety of reasons, including a couple of things. The Department of Justice recently got what many of us would consider a significant victory over a couple of integrators. Wayne's Farm and Sanderson merged, and as a part of that merger, there was a consent decree, which basically just means that the industry giants chose to agree with DOJ and settle with the Department of Justice and say they wouldn't, at least on those farms and in those contracts, use the tournament system and some other labor violations, settle some other labor violations for meat packing workers and a variety of issues there. In addition, we know that the meat packers have been now targeted for price fixing, and there's a whole bunch of issues around sort of higher meat costs and those sorts of things that have been flagged as sort of anti-competitive or antitrust violations by the big meat packers. So there's really a moment in time now where these rules that have been made, the initial one that we're talking about, and I know Michael and Susie will talk a little bit about each of these comment periods in a moment, but this initial one around the tournament system information and providing more transparency around poultry growing contracts or livestock growing contracts as a whole, it is sort of the first in that process. We anticipate, and at least have been communicated to, that the USDA is working on additional rules around clarifying the Packers and Stockyards Act. But this is our first chance as advocates, as growers, as livestock producers, to really weigh in on this process since 2015, quite honestly, in a real robust way. And we think that there is finally the momentum to get these rules done. The important thing to note, though, is that the industry, and I know Craig will talk about this a little more later, but the industry is fighting this process tooth and nail. They have fought it. The reason the delays have occurred since 2008 is because of industry influence and what we often refer to as the big ag lobby in Washington, D.C., getting their way over the legislators. Quite honestly, what was a little bit miraculous that in 2008 we got this into the Farm Bill to change these, to make these rules, but then The industry won again by holding up the process, and they've been winning along the way. And so, we can't let up. We think we have a little bit of momentum, but we can't let up the pressure to make sure that these rules get done. Not only the rule around transparency, which we're going to hear about, but also just simply telling the administration what we think about how anti-competitive the tournament system itself is as a pay structure, and how that we need all of these rules to clarify the packers role, the meat packers role, and the farmers role in the marketplace, and to create fairness in the process. So we're just really starting, and I'm excited that SRAP invited me, and I'm excited they're having this Facebook Live, because this is the chance, the beginning to start for all growers and farmers listening to this, whether you're in a contract currently or not, to tell the U.S. Department of Agriculture what you think about the fairness of the way these systems are designed, and to ensure that they're hearing the voices of farmers. Because quite honestly, they will hear the voice of industry, and those industry integrators are using their lobbyists on Capitol Hill and at calling on USDA to make their position heard. So we really needed to be making sure that that those of us out in the countryside are getting our voice heard in that process as well. So that's the big picture. That sets the scene for kind of where we're at and why these rules exist and the process that we're going through. There's a couple of comment periods open now. We want to encourage you to get involved in those, and there will be more comment periods in the future on additional rules, and we will need to keep up the pressure at USDA to ensure that they are working in the best interest of farmers and ranchers. So that's hopefully enough to set it up. I'm happy to answer questions later, Craig, as we go, and maybe Michael wants to take over and talk more about the initial rule.
You're on mute, Craig.
Yeah, let me jump in here. Julie, do you want to queue up the letter now?
Yes, sir. Give me 1 second here.
It is a letter that one of the integrators was handing out its growers to about the comments. And so I have a good friend who gets a lot of information, very resourceful gentleman. And he sent me the copy of this first one here where it says instructions for submitting comments. I didn't really think much of it. And then I started reading a little bit. And then I caught in like the first sentence, there were errors. It is only one rule, the transparency in poultry grower contracting and tournaments proposed rule. The second is an advance notice of a rulemaking on fairness related to the poultry tournament system. Now, this is like, we think there's smoke. We need some more comments to see if there's any fire so we can continue on with it. But I don't know exactly where this letter came from, but I see that the August the 8th of 2022 is like in a box. That's true for the first rule. But the advance notice, the comments are actually not due till September the 6th. So we got a little bit of time there. So there's that. So reading a little further down, it referenced a copy about something about copying and pasting comments and attaching files. And my question was, well, where's this at? So, but then deja vu hit me. And I remember in 2010, the integrators were handing out pre-printed postcards for the growers to sign and mail in. We're into 2022 now. We don't do snail mail anymore. Everything's going to be done online. But I knew that there just had to be more to it. So sure enough, I reached back out to the gentleman, and he and just no time whatsoever had me 2 more documents. One was a Dear Grower letter that you see up there now. And it talks about how the tournament system would make it more difficult to pay premiums to farmers who, through their dedication, time, and skill, who raise those birds in such an efficient manner. Isn't that a description of all farmers? I mean, you mean the companies have contracts with farmers who don't have the skill or dedication to raise birds in the most efficient manner? And if that's the case, I got to ask the industry why. Then it rambles on about opening the doors to other countries to compete for our business and jobs. And I can almost hear the battle hymn of the Republic playing in the background when I was reading it. And it talks about how the industry is heavily regulated. Really? I can't name one regulation that protects a farmer from the deceptive or manipulative practices of this industry, but I can name you many, many farmers who have fallen subject to these deceptive practices and manipulative practices. So it states that if you value your right, let me read this now. If you value your right to be fairly based on your hard work and commitment, just say no. Well, every week, a certain number of farmers who all working as hard as they can are forced to compete in this system. And this system is such a system that it would make Bernie Madoff of the Ponzi scheme fame envious. Every farmer can do the exact same thing in that week to the letter. Some will get bonuses, some will get docked. That's the game. It's a zero-sum game for the company that makes at least that one cost predictable, how much they're going to pay those farmers. The pie, folks, is finite. The growers are just scrambling for a little bigger piece. It's always seemed very odd to me that the folks that stand back and they cheerlead this tournament system so loud don't get paid that way. If it is the end all be all that makes the chicken industry so great, why not pay everyone that way? Why not pay the service techs that way? Why not pay the executives that way? Why doesn't every industry adopt the tournament system? What bottom line is, it doesn't compensate farmers fairly. Competition is, I start at this line and you start at this line. We both run to this line. The winner is the winner. But the tournament system doesn't work that way. And it's just one simple phrase. It's 5 words. It's all inputs are not equal. You cannot hatch out 1 million chicks a week and have them all with the same genetic potential. That's the only way the tournament system works, if it is a direct reflection of the management of the farm. You cannot produce millions or billions of pounds of feed and it all be the same caloric profile or the same nutritional profile. It's just logistically impossible. A dog can have 5 puppies and all aren't the same genetic, all don't have the same genetics. How in the world can 1 million chickens do that? So it's really kind of backwards notion. It's a really kind of a backwards notion in this business that farmers who work harder get rewarded. Like I said, this ain't my first rodeo. I was in it for 23.5 years. And I knew when I worked hard, had to work really extra hard during the flock, I was dealing with something that was out of my control. And I was probably going to see a deduction and I was not going to get a bonus for my hard work and dedication. So I'm just going to cut to the chase. The tournament system is a cost control measure, plain and simple. These companies are about controlling the process. They don't own the farms. And there's a reason for that, because it's the least profitable part of the business. They do much better by what we always called farming the farmer. If I was still growing and somebody handed me this letter, I would be incensed. I cannot tell you probably the undue influence this has on a grower. It's got to be tremendous when a company rep walks up to you and says, hey, we need you to sign this and send it in, because they can go to the website and pull it up and see if you did or not. That's a lot of pressure. You know, I'm a kind of a government is a court of last resort guy. And I think that's just where poultry growers are right now. These companies need to respect the farmer. They need to respect how integral they are to this business. And we need to get instead of pulling us out as shields to disguise the truth. So I hope that you guys think long and hard about it. And we really would like for you to comment and support these rules.
Thanks, Craig. And for folks online, we will try to put the letter in the chat so that people can take a look at that themselves on their own time. Next, we have Michael Diaz, who is going to talk to us a little bit more about the rule and what it means. Michael, I give you the floor.
Great, thanks for sharing that. I mean, that truly is, I mean, it makes me want to throw up. If you want me to be quite frank, that's how it makes me feel. I'm going to go ahead, Julie. Let me see if I can share my screen and dig into this transparency rule a little bit. How's that looking? Can everybody see that? Are we good?
Yeah, I think we're good, Michael. Thank you.
All right, good deal. So, you know, what I'd like to say is, you know, this proposed transparency rule is something that the USDA is coming up with. You know, it's not necessarily rumors and hearsay that farmers are talking about. These are issues that the USDA themselves are recognizing within the poultry sector. And let's see here, I'm having a little bit of an issue. All right, hold on a minute. All right, let me get to the top. All right, so what does the rule do? The rule is talking about transparency in poultry growing contracts and tournaments. All right, the rule is going to require integrators to truthfully disclose info that growers need to make so that they can make informed decisions about their contracts. I'm gonna stop right here and just say that, you know, had this been in effect when we purchased our farm, you know, just about 5 years ago, I would like to say that we would have never, ever, ever signed on a dotted line. You know, the rule requires integrators to truthfully disclose information that growers need to make informed decisions about their contract. All right, the USDA believes there are problems with regards to transparency, and they said they come up with, you know, with a main problem, and that main problem is addressing the misleading information poultry companies share with their growers. Integrators tend to keep pertinent data and use it to take advantage of growers. Had I had the availability of information that this rule is proposing, there's no way that my wife and I would have decided to get into poultry. There's just no way. Let's see, next slide. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties here. All right. So what are some of the, I don't know why I'm sorry, y'all. What are some problems that are identified by the USDA? Number one, contracts don't guarantee a minimum number. They just don't guarantee a minimum number of flocks or bird density for a given year. All right, that makes financial planning, I'm going to call it an impossibility. If you don't know how many birds, how many flocks you're going to get in a given year, and if you don't know your bird density, it's impossible for a farmer to forecast what's my profitability going to be. All right. Number two, integrators don't disclose the unreliability of a tournament-based pay system. Craig just touched on that. They fail to disclose accurate downtimes. They don't talk about, you know, a guaranteed bird density and the montage of variability with inputs that are all out of a grower's control. I'd like to say this, you know, when you think of the term tournament, tournament is indicative of a contest. I don't know anybody that runs a business, right, that's based on a contest. Number three, they also don't clearly disclose the flock's origin, their breed, their gender ratio, and their health, as well as feed quality and disruptions and facility factors. So those are problems that the USDA themselves have identified within contract poultry. All right, let's go. I did not realize I was going to have so much trouble here. Sorry, y'all. This is not for good. So what are some of the new requirements? All right, some of the new requirements: poultry companies must disclose a minimum number of flocks per year and bird density of such flocks. Number two, they have to disclose any litigation the company has had for the previous 6 years. Number three, they have to disclose any sale of farm policies. All right, I'm going to stop right there and give you a quick little rundown. We bought our farm realized really quick that it was not, just wasn't a feasible business model for us to plan a retirement on. And we wanted to sell. Well, verbatim, I'm going to tell you the exact words that one of the integrators shared with us. And the integrator told us, I said, look, we're thinking about selling our farm. We have some different interest. And the integrator told us, they said, that's fine. You can sell the farm and we'll offer up a contract to the next prospective grower. That kind of sat with me for a minute, and I was wondering, I said, the next prospective grower. So we listed our farm up for sale, got a couple of hits on it pretty quick. And I call up the integrator. The integrator responds with, we need to set up a meeting to see if we're a good fit. And at that point, I said, we need to call up a meeting to see if we're a good fit. What in the world what does that mean? At that point, I realized that the sale of our farm was totally out of our hands, just like everything else, all of the other inputs that these farmers rely on to generate, a paycheck. It's out of your hands. Whether or not we sold the farm was totally at the discretion of our integrator. Had we had that disclosure up front, again, I'll say we would have never, ever chose to enter contract poultry. It also, number 4, it requires a legitimate income breakdown on the houses that are under contract and a disclosure on average grower pay for the grower's region and the company as a whole. Number 5, they require you to give us, they're required to give a summary of the grower's prospective variable costs. There are tons of costs that were not shared with us going in. Okay, tons of cost. Number 6, it requires disclosure on the origin, the breed, the gender ratio, and the health of the flocks placed within 24 hours of delivery. And I say number 7 and 8. I would think that these integrators are kicking back really hard on this. I can't see them liking this at all. It requires full disclosure on each settlement with regards to origin, breed, gender ratio, the health of their flock, as well as every other flock in the tournament group. And number 8 requires poultry companies to disclose how the tournament system's formulas account for input quality variability and feed discrepancies. I don't think that's information that they want shared at the end of a settlement. Okay, I don't think they want that shared, but I think that's pertinent information for growers and farmers to be able to track data on their farm as well as everybody else's farm that went out at a given week, so that they can tell if whether or not their inputs are equal, whether or not their management practices are up to par. Those are here we go again. All right, so enforcement. All right, all that's great, but how are they going to enforce this stuff? All those changes are fantastic. Enforcement, this is how they do it. They're going to require CEOs to sign an agreement that mandates implementation of those internal controls. All right, the rule's no good unless it's enforced. We all know that. All right, the USDA says that there's still problems that will remain, even if these proposed rules wind up getting passed, there's still problems. So what are the problems? One of the problems can be poultry companies may still offer contracts that don't guarantee annual placement numbers or bird densities. They may still offer contracts with no guarantee at all. And it's also worth mentioning that they're not required to guarantee contracts for the duration of a farmer's their loan obligation. We had I heard Craig say a minute ago that he was $500,000 in debt. That was 20 years ago. As time, maybe might be more than that, Craig. I might be speaking out of turn saying 20 years. I think it might be 25, 30 years. The debt burden that farmers are taking on nowadays to get into these mega facilities are in the millions of dollars. our loan was a 15-year loan, and there was no obligation at all. The contract was worth the paper, wasn't worth the paper that it was written on. They could cancel on us at any time with some kind of 90-day advance notice. You know, that's a huge thing that could still be a problem even after these proposed rules, if they go into effect. So I want to stress that this is just a step in the right direction. There's still a lot more that needs to be done. Number two, another thing, it says disclosure doesn't mean change. They're not required to make new tournament system formulas that account for the variability of inputs. They could say, okay, we're disclosing this information to you, but we're still going to go ahead and we're going to operate as normal like we've always done. Number three, the tournament group composition effects. You can grow two identical flocks and perform entirely different within a different tournament group. I was just talking with a grower this morning who said, you know, that's happened to me a numerous number of times. I grew our target weight is a 9-pound bird. I had a 9.33 average. My feed conversion was X. We placed one in the tournament. The very next flock we came out, we had the same, the same data, but we placed last. They're a tournament base of pay does not work. Just doesn't work. Let's see. I don't know why this computer is. All right. What does the rule? What does the rule do? The rule is a step in the right direction. All right, but please remember it's only a step. A farmer would be able to make a more informed decision on whether or not entering the poultry sector would be a wise financial decision. Integrators may have to guarantee in writing items that are crucial to the farmer's ability to predict profitability. And with trackable data, farmers can gauge their performance to determine whether they need better farm management or better inputs. Retaliation, disadvantages during grow out, or any other variable beyond the farmer's control would be exposed. I think that those are huge changes. All right, the USDA acknowledges that poultry companies have far too much power. They control the market with unfair advantages. They can control price. They can control your contract terms, and they have the ability to squash any resistance toward change that benefits the farmer. All right, these unfair advantages have got to change. That's what these rules are trying to do. All right, now remember, let's see here. I had ended with something that my wife had said, and it stuck with me hard, and I thought about it, and I wanted to share it with you. And you know, she said, babe, these are just items that farmers are entitled to. They're not giving us anything. These are inherent rights as a business owner in a free society. And that's what it all boils down to. Okay. It boils down to that. They're not giving us anything. These are rights that any business owner we're farmers, but we're trying to run a business. Any business owner that is trying to turn a profit, that's trying to engage competitively in a market, should have the right to the information that they're just downright holding back. All right, Susie, are you going to talk a little bit about the tournament system?
Yes, I am. In September, the 6th is the closing date on the second proposal that is coming up. This proposal, the majority of growers producing under production contracts are paid under grower ranking, the tournament's pay system, and this addresses that. The integrators, as we all know, they provide the feed, the birds, all the labor in the facilities and everything is on the burden of the grower. Grower compensation is based on a grouping, ranking, or comparison of poultry growers whose poultry was harvested during the specific period, usually 1 week. And in this system, basically, they take away from the growers on the bottom and they give to the growers on the top. But the company ends up paying the same across the board for every pound of chicken that crosses their scales that week. They just punish some growers and pat other growers on the back with this tournament system. So if you feel that this tournament system is an unfair to you as a poultry grower, please fill out the comments online, and we will have the websites that you can go to, or the links that you can go to put in your comments. But please go comment on this tournament system rule, which the period ends September the 6th on this comment period. The one that Michael is August the 8th. Ours is the tournament system will be the next one coming up. But please comment on both of them and give your truthful answer as to how this tournament system has affected you and how it could affect other growers. In our case, this tournament system caused us to have to go into bankruptcy, which I would have never dreamed of having to do. So I'm going to be first in line to comment on this comment period. Craig, back to you. And your comments on this.
I think we're going to open it up for questions now. Thank you so much, Susie. That was very powerful. Also, Craig, Michael, and Jake. We all really appreciate your comments and your insights on this important matter. But yeah, if anyone out there listening has any questions for us, feel free to put those in the chat. And while we're waiting for folks to do that, if they wish to do that, one question that Jake Davis is going to answer for us is, what kinds of comments should go into each of these rules? So in other words, what should these comments really look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that Craig and Michael and Susie have done a great job at outlining the issues and sort of what the big, the real problems in this industry are. And I think that there's really two answers. One is that the first comment period on August 8th is really focused around transparency. So making clear to USDA that if you do, that you support transparency and that you support more grower information is a really critical first step. But I think it potentially doesn't go far enough. I think it's fine to go further and say to USDA that you still believe that the industry is anti-competitive and that the industry is that things like the tournament system are anti-competitive practices and that they rise to the level of needing further review and further work done by USDA. Certainly the September deadline, the September 6th deadline, is specifically asking for information about the tournament system. And so those that have explicit examples that, like Michael and Susie were talking about through life experience or friends and family, through interactions with the tournament system, should share those comments and share those experiences about how predatory and anti-competitive they are as a part of paying a farmer for their work. And so that is really the focus of the second comment period, is really talking about that system of getting paid and getting paid in comparison to to taking money away out of the pocket. If you do well in the tournament, taking money out of the pocket of your neighbor and putting it in your pocket, and the next week vice versa, which ultimately gives the industry more power, gives the integrator the most power to decide sort of who's the winner and who's the loser that week. So that's what the second comment period is about. And really folks should target their comments in the second comment period towards those payment systems. I think it's also worth noting that you don't have to be a contract grower to make comments. If you're a rural resident or a neighbor to one of these facilities, or just a concerned citizen, a consumer who eats, chicken or pork, you should be making comments to USDA about how the way farmers get paid impacts your life, and how you don't want the multinational meat packers sort of, putting pressure on your neighbors and making sure that they live in poverty and those sorts of things. So, while we've been talking about a lot about growers commenting, and those of course will be powerful, farmers and ranchers making comments to USDA will be powerful. Certainly, we will also have a lot of power of, just rural neighbors and eaters commenting, and the more there's no limit on the number of comments. So as Susie mentioned, comment on both, even if it's the same comment, even if you just put your thoughts down about what USDA should be doing in these things, make sure you submit them in both categories so that USDA has an opportunity to read your thoughts. That's their job. It's your government, and they need to be hearing from you, because as Craig pointed out, they are clearly hearing the industry perspective. Not only is the industry giving their perspective from their lobbyists, they're also forcing or pressuring, or at least putting their thumb on the scale to urge growers to submit those comments from their perspective. So we need to be sure that we're balancing that by giving as much as we can perspective of folks who don't have that undue pressure on what they say. So if you're a former grower, anyone who is listening to this, I would urge them, let's put the pressure on USDA now to do the right thing in these rules.
Yeah, Jake, I just that was a great info. I'm going to add, like, here's something that in my mind I was thinking about. What would some comments be, or when they talked about transparency, they were talking about the breeder flock, the origin. A farmer may want to dig in a little deeper than that. Poultry growers that have grown poultry for a while know that if you're getting chicks from a young breeder flock, you're going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage against guys that are getting chicks from a breeder flock that's right in the middle of their cycle. If that's the type of data that you think would be helpful to know, then let the USDA know about it. Those are the comments that they need to hear.
Thank you, Michael, and Jake, both of you. It's definitely not limited to poultry growers. Like Jake and Michael mentioned, if you eat food, then these rules affect you. We have one more question that we're going to ask here, and it's from Eddie. He asked, why not just eliminate the tournament pay system and just pay a contract price per pound? I think Craig is going to answer that for us. Craig?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it probably be a question maybe better answered by the integrators. I mean, they kind of set the rules of it, but that would be an improvement in the system. We push for a standard base rate pay, but then the industry comes in and says, oh, you don't want them old bad growers making the same money you good growers make. So they kind of divide and conquer that way. And there's already hybrids out here that exist that pay a base pay and a bonus. There's nothing wrong with paying that bonus. Let's just quit the taking away where a guy just like Susie winds up in bankruptcy court. Probably a better system than even a base pay per pound would be based on square footage, a good reasonable return on square footage, because I just got a thing from a farmer the other day. He placed 27,000 birds. He lost 5,200. That's 20% of his birds died. Even if he gets this base payment, that's standard, he loses because he didn't have a lot of pounds where his square footage didn't change. So maybe that's even a better suggestion, but certainly a guaranteed base rate that you could kind of budget on would be a market improvement. But the integrator is going to fight that because the tournament system absorbs every bit of inefficiency in that live production system, and the farmer pays for it. So like I said, they're farming the farmer, man.
And Julie, I'll just only add to say that's the kind of thing that I think the step one is eliminate the tournament system as anti-competitive. And that's what the September 6th comment period is asking about. I think that's the kind of comment for the September comment that would be incredibly important, right? It's hard to say exactly, to Craig's point, like what is the most fair system, but what we certainly know is that the tournament system is the least fair system. And that's the first step, is to begin to say, and not just begin to say forcefully to USDA, this is an unfair system.
Thank you. That was a really great addition to our conversation. I'm going to go ahead and put us in gallery view again, so everybody can thank the audience for joining us today. Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to add before we close out? No, we covered a lot of topics today, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to us on our Facebook page. And visit our website to learn more about our organization. I'm also going to be putting a link in the chat to our newsletter. So more on this topic, as well as anything related to concentrated animal feeding operations and helping communities fight the adverse impacts of those. I encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter. And again, yeah, we'll throw that in the chat for you. But we just really want to let everyone know that's watching today that we really appreciate your support and for hanging in there with us through some of the technical difficulties. Going live sometimes comes with a little mistakes here and there. So thanks for bearing with us, and special thanks to our guest, Jake Davis, for joining us today. And with that, we will adjourn. So thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Happy Tuesday. Take care.
Thank you.
Goodbye.